Hello, this is Mr. Smith, and in today's podcast, we're going to be going over the respiratory system. Unlike the first podcast, we're going to be going over function. So the first one we went over structurally, how it's put together. Now we're going to go over function. First of all, there's a certain zone, which we refer to as the respiratory zone. Within the respiratory zone, we have the respiratory bronchioles, the alveolar ducts, the alveolar sacs, the alveoli, which is where the gas exchange actually takes place. Everything above this, so we have the bronchioles and the lungs, and we have the trachea and the larynx and all that. That would just be kind of transport. Now we're actually in the respiratory zone. So now we're getting more deep where eventually we're actually going to have gas exchange take place. This is just a illustration showing you how that respiratory zone is put together. So we have those respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, alveolar sacs. We have these pores which kind of connect the alveoli together, kind of help them to communicate a little bit. This is just a photomicrograph showing you lung tissue. Respiratory membrane. So we have what's called the air-blood barrier. The air-blood barrier, occurs in that alveolar sac. Within the alveoli, we have the pores which connect neighboring alveoli together. We have pulmonary capillaries which cover the surface of the alveoli. This allows for that gas exchange to take place because we have an air and a blood barrier. The blood is flowing past through those capillaries. The air is on the opposite side. So this is just another illustration showing you, here's the capillary with the red blood cell. Here is the alveoli itself. We have that air-blood barrier which is loading oxygen, taking out carbon dioxide. Gas exchange then can take place inside of there because of that air-blood barrier, because it's only one cell layer thick. Within the alveoli, we have two different structures that are very important. We have what's called the alveolar macrophages, which we refer to as dust cells, which pick up any type of bacteria or any particle that could be harmful. It's going to clean that surface out. We also have what's called surfactant, which is a lipid molecule which coats the alveolar, which allows it so that those alveolar sacs do not just collapse on themselves. This is just another illustration here showing you these little green things, or what's called the surfactant secreting cells, which allow that lipid or that surfactant to coat the alveoli. Here's the macrophages, which then kind of clean it out, those dust cells, which clean out all the bad stuff that gets inside of there. There are 4 events with respiration. The first event would be pulmonary ventilation, which is most commonly called breathing. We then have external respiration, which is gas exchange between the blood and the alveoli. So oxygen is loading into the blood, carbon dioxide is unloading from the blood. The respiratory gases then transport throughout the blood system, and then we have internal respiration. Internal respiration is just gas exchange between the blood and the tissues themselves. So now we are loading the tissues up with carbon dioxide, or oxygen, and carbon dioxide is loading into the blood. Pulmonary ventilation has 2 phases. We have the first phase, which is called inspiration, which is inhaling, allowing air to load into the lungs, and then expiration is just exhaling. Air is then leaving the lungs. During inspiration, the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles contract, allowing the thoracic cavity to increase in size, pulling all that air inside. This is just showing those external intercostal muscles, which kind of contract and they increase it, or they pull the ribs together so that there's more room in there for all that gas, for all that air. The diaphragm will also move inferiorly, creating more room for the inside the thoracic cavity as well. Expiration then is the air leaving. So during expiration, this is a totally passive process, which basically the muscles just relax, and when they relax, the air just flows out. We also can have forced expiration, which when we force the air out of our lungs, the intercostal muscles are then going to contract and kind of push that out with the help of the diaphragm as well. The diaphragm is going to move up, and you can see how this has really decreased in size. Breathing is is primarily dependent not just on your lungs and the diaphragm, but mainly on the atmospheric pressure. When the atmospheric pressure, when you breathe in, is greater inside your lungs than it is outside, it causes you to breathe out because the atmospheric pressure needs to be equal. Whereas the opposite way, when we breathe out, the atmospheric pressure is greater on the outside of our body than on the inside, causing us to breathe in. We also have non-respiratory gas movements, which needs to be just, when gas is moving in and out of our lungs, either voluntary or involuntary, so like coughing and sneezing, crying, laughing, hiccups, and yawning. These would all be gas exchange, but they're not common. They're not things that we do every single day or every moment of every day. Well, that concludes our podcast for today on the functional part of the respiratory system. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in class.